Welcome to the One Player Podcast, the show Untitled Chapter board games. I'm your host Albert, and this is episode 343. Simply the best solo games. Hey everybody, welcome back. This week I am talking. Well, actually, this is unprecedented in One Player Podcast history. This is going to be a two-part episode. These next 2 weeks, I'm going to be talking about the Simply Solo games from Bud & Shy Games, and they're all designed by Scott Almes. It's a series of solo games by Scott Almes, who's actually probably pretty well known. If you don't know him, you probably know some of his games. He's done many games, including many solo games and variants for other people's games and things like that. He has, for example, done the Tiny Epic series of games. He created So You've Been Eaten, and also the Warp's Edge in the Simply Solo series. In the Solo Heroes series from Renegade Game Studios. So he has done a lot of stuff. He's been publishing games for about 10 years, roughly. 14 years. He's got 201 designs, which includes games and expansions. But still, that's a lot in 14 years. And so not just lots of games, but also many well-known and well-liked games. Warp's Edge is a really great game, for example, that I really like. Anyway, this week we're talking about the Bud & Shy games. The first one came out in 2002. So far there have been 6 published, and there's a 7th one that has been announced and already kickstarted, so it's on its way. They're very small games, so the Kickstarters tend to go very quickly. This is not something that's going to be out in 4 or 5 years. This is something that'll be out in a few months probably. And that one's called Nice Cuppa, as in a cup of tea. It's supposedly a nice, relaxing game, but that's all I know about it. So there's 6 games that are already out, and I figured maybe I'll talk about all of them, and I'll rank them from my least favorite to my most favorite. Though I won't say there's any that I dislike per se. My plan is to do 3 this show, and then 3 next show. And I'm even going to have a giveaway, so you're going to have to listen through to the end of the next episode probably to learn how to enter. Actually, no. I'll go ahead and tell you what the contest is now and how to enter it, and you've got more time to do it in case you forget this time. Maybe next time you remembered. Don't forget, as a matter of fact, pause this. Go ahead and send me a geek mail now to enter, or an email, whichever, and get your name in the drawing. If you don't get a reply from me, that means I haven't received it. Try again. And give me a couple days. So I recently ordered a couple expansions from Bud & Shy Games. I ordered an expansion pack for the Royal Limited and some expansion cards for the Last Lighthouse. And they accidentally sent me the wrong thing. They sent me the expansion cards for the Last Lighthouse and a copy of the Last Lighthouse, which I already had. And then they went and fixed it and got me the expansions I actually had ordered. So now I've got an extra copy of the Last Lighthouse. So that being said, I'm going to give it to a listener of the podcast. All you have to do to enter is send me an email or a geek mail, as I said. But tell me about your favorite lighthouse. You got to put a little work into this. It could be a real lighthouse. It could be a fake lighthouse. It could be lighthouse adjacent. But let me know about your favorite lighthouse. I always thought lighthouses are super cool. I find they're fun to draw. I like lighthouses. So there we go. I'll tell you mine. I guess it would have to be in Florida, in Key Biscayne. There is a lighthouse there that we used to go to the beach all the time there when I was young. And I remember it's an old stone lighthouse. It must be a couple 100 years old. I don't really know. But it looked like it was made from coral stone or something. At least that's my memory. I haven't been back in years and years and years. And I think it was called, well, I don't know what it's called, but we always called it El Farito, which means the lighthouse or the little lighthouse. So that's mine. Let me know yours. You can pick the same one if that's also your favorite, or you could pick anything else. Any real or imagined lighthouse works. Oh yeah, where do you send this message to? Geek mail would be at Fractaloon via BGG. Go to BGG, find my user, and send a geek mail to Fractaloon. Or my email will be albert@oneplayerpodcast.com. There's other ways to get a hold of me. Those work too. So anyway, my plan is to rank the games. Let me tell you what the 6 games are in case you're not familiar with them. Let me get my notes here. So the first one that came out was in 2020. It hasn't even been coming out for that long. It's more than a game a year at this rate. It was Food Chain Island. This is a game where this is a game where you're having animals eat smaller animals, and it's a food chain, and it's an island of them. Rather simple game. We'll get more into that. The next one is the Ugly Griffin Inn, in which you are a proprietor of a fantasy inn, and you have guests coming to the bar, and then sometimes getting rooms to stay at the inn. Your goal is to fill up the inn. The third one is Unsurmountable, in which you're climbing a mountain. That's very hard to climb, hence it's unsurmountable. That was the third one. That one came out, so the first one came out in 2020. The next two came out in 2021. So busy. The next one, Fishing Lessons, came out in 2022, in which you have an older gentleman who has given his family fishing lessons over the years, and you play one of the family members applying the fishing lessons to try and catch fish. Hang on, kitty. Hang on. Where's my paperweight? Run, be free. Go. Go or no? Standing at the door. Thank you. All right. So that was Fishing Lessons in 2022. The next one is in 2023, the Royal Limited, in which you are, I guess you're a train conductor. You're building a train and putting passengers on it, and that's basically the theme of the game. So it's a train game, sort of. After that, in 2024, the last one to have come out is The Last Lighthouse, which is a game about what I'm going to call a Lovecraftian lighthouse, in which you're trying to fend off evil monsters by shining your lights on them and setting traps. And one nice couple is the next one. I assume it'll come out this year. I'm not sure. I already mentioned all these games are from Bud and Shy Games, so that means it's a small wallet game. The Bud and Shy Games, it's a small plastic wallet with 18 cards in it and a rulebook, and every single game is that style. It's a little tiny rulebook. It's about the size of a playing card, but it's folded 4 times, so it's 8 pages, 4 sheets. But they're little, so there's not a whole lot of rules to them. Not a whole lot of text. There's also expansions made for these. I already mentioned I got some expansions. The expansions tend to be very small, with just a few cards each. Maybe as many as 5 cards in an expansion, or 6, but that's kind of unusual. Most are just 2 or 3 cards, I think. And the rules. Most of the expansions tend to add or change things around a little bit. Sometimes they just add more of the same. And that's pretty typical for Bud and Shy. The games are cheap. I think they're about $12 or $13 each. You could buy them directly from Bud and Shy. Some game stores do carry some games. My friend, the local game store, does carry these. I think I bought The Last Lighthouse at the game store, and probably actually a few of the last ones. Instead of backing them on Kickstarter, I just decided to support my game store. Now, the problem with that, unfortunately, is that when you support your game store, you don't get all the promos and stuff that may come out with it. For whatever reason, Bud and Shy only sells the base game to the stores, and you have to go directly to them to get the rest of the stuff. So there we go. That's a quick primer on Bud and Shy Games, and by extension, the Simply Solo series. All 6 games by Bud and Shy. So now, my next plan is to rank the 6 of them. I'm going to do 3 at a time. Excuse me. So 3 this week and 3 next week. And of course, I will be going from my least favorite to my most favorite. First up is Unsurmountable. This is the mountain climbing game. You're a mountain climber trying to get from the base camp up to the peak. The game is pretty simple. Your goal is to basically set up the cards in a pyramid shape. So you can have 4 cards in the bottom, 3 on top of that, 2 on top of that, and 1 on top of that. The cards have pictures of mountain paths on them, often or always extending out at least one side of the card. The short sides have 1 path out of them. The long sides have 2, but not every possible path is there. So like a card may have a path coming out the left and then going up and down on the right side of the long edges. It's hard to explain, but basically, yes, the cards have paths that come out of it, and your goal is to connect the cards in a way that makes a path up the mountain as you play them. You're setting up 5 cards along the bottom. This is called your base camp. On your turn, you could always play the leftmost card of the base camp to the mountain. You start by placing it anywhere in the bottom row, and after that, any card you play has to connect to an existing card. As you place them, that bottom row could be up to 4 wide, and anytime you place a card above the bottom row, it has to rest on top of 2 cards. So you're building a pyramid shape, or mountain shape, really, in this case. As you play a card from the base camp, all the other cards shift left, and then you add another card. So there's always 5 cards in the base camp. The rules can change that. The other 4 cards, the reason they're out isn't just so you could see what's coming up, is each of these cards have some effect on them in the text. You can always, instead of playing the first card, choose to play any of the other cards for the effect. The effect basically lets you rearrange things or do a couple of things. A couple effects are bad, most are generally good or just effective. They do things like tell you to rearrange cards in the mountain or the base camp, or play a card from the base camp to the mountain, or different things like that. So all you're doing is trying to build a card such that you can make a path. Once the mountain is built, you can make a path from the base all the way to the top of the mountain. And it has to start, the path has to come up from the bottom of the base and then connect. Any meandering path works to the top. I found it a little confusing at first because the rules were not super clear. You have to read them carefully, and some of it is actually looking at the pictures and seeing examples in the pictures, but not actually reading words telling you this. But for example, as you play the cards, they don't ever have to connect paths. You could, in theory, play every card. Well, you couldn't do every card so they don't connect. But you could always play a card even though it may not connect to any existing cards. They just have to be in the right spot. The paths don't always have to connect as you place them. But you do need to finish it with a complete path going from the bottom to the top. That means you may have a few spots where they're unreachable. Maybe because of the snow or something. Whatever. Yeah, I didn't find that too clear. My first few games, I was only playing cards such that they had to continue the path from the original base camp card, which really made it hard. Once I figured out I was doing that wrong and I started playing the correct way, I found it a lot easier. There's the way they say you win a game. You just have to do that connection, but there's different levels of winning. The lowest level is just make the connection. At higher levels, each of the cards also has a little image in the middle of the card. And there's like a pine tree, abominable snowman, abominable. A little picture of a lake that looks like a guitar pick, a tent. So these different things, there's like 5 different shapes, I think. As you play, the rule is you cannot have 2 of the same shape, I think, on the same row or adjacent to each other. And then the next level to win. The next level of winning, I think, any cards along the outside diagonals cannot have the same symbol repeating on those diagonals. And in the end, it's even like on the card, there's pictures of little people walking on the path and climbing. When you complete your path, the number of hikers on the path has to be less than the height of the mountain. So less than 4. So trying to build the mountain, make your path, and if you're trying to win at a higher level, also meet some of these extra challenges of having the icons in the right place. So this work turns out to be a game of placing cards carefully in the right spot to build that path and meet the other criteria. The reason this one ranks lowest for me is because I found it pretty easy to win, actually. Not always at the hardest difficulty, but always get a win. And it just didn't feel challenging. I guess even the highest difficulty did not feel too hard for me. Maybe I'm doing something wrong, or maybe it isn't too hard, but I did not like that. And so it ranks number 6. The gameplay, it's fun enough. It's puzzly. It's interesting trying to choose which card from the base camp to play, whether it's the current left card or one of the event cards. And you do have to think ahead and make planning and do some planning so it'll work out in the end. You can't just play whatever. It really does require thinking to win. So that is fun that way. It's just I did not find it challenging. There are 2 expansions for it. Well, I have 2 expansions for it. I think there's more. The expansions I have, one makes the mountain taller, one has 2 peaks. I haven't tried them, honestly. I wasn't inclined to. I didn't really feel excited by them. So that's my number 6. Unsurmountable. Number 5, well, and I'm sorry to say it's the game I'm going to be giving away, The Last Lighthouse. This is the one where you have a lighthouse and you're trying to survive the night. Now, I do like this game though, even though I've ranked it number 5. Like I said, I like them all really. None of them are bad. It was actually kind of hard to rank these. I love the theme about this. I really, really, really do. And I love the artwork on this game. It's really creepy, nightmarish style art with these creepy monsters. When you start looking closely at the cards, you're like, oh yeah, this is creepy. This is really creepy. And I like that about it. The art is fantastic. And the way you play here is you place your lighthouse card on the left, and there's a little health tracker that you play with it, where you'll slide it up and down under the lighthouse. And then the rest of the cards in the game are all the nightmare cards. They're double-sided in that you rotate them 180 degrees. You don't flip them front to back, but top and bottom. And on one end, it is a nightmare. Most of the card really is a nightmare. And a small section at the other end, when you flipped it over, is a trap that you could play. Each of these nightmares has an ability and a strength and a range of how far they can attack. Likewise, when you flip them over, your traps have an ability, a range, and a strength. Or a health. They're not strength, they're health. At the start of the game, you're going to play, depending on the difficulty, you're going to place 4 cards, and some number of them will be on the nightmare side, and the other number will be, and the rest will be on the trap side. I think the standard difficulty is 2 and 2. So 2 nightmares and 2 traps. And the turn consists basically of doing 2 actions, which is either attacking a nightmare with your traps or playing a trap from your hand anywhere in the stream of cards. So you could place it in the front, right next to the lighthouse, between it and the first card, at the end, after the last card, or anywhere in the middle. And then the second action is to attack. You could place cards twice, you could attack twice, you could mix it up. The way you attack is each trap has 2 numbers, an attack distance going left and an attack distance going right, and some sort of special ability. Many of the abilities are triggered when you place the cards, some when you defeat them. Let's say I'm attacking the lighthouse, that's the first card. I have to have cards that could reach it. Let's say my first 2 cards are nightmares. To reach that first card, I have to have a card to the right of it that's got, say, a range 3. And maybe a card in front of it with a range 1. That would, 1, 2. Actually, there's a range 2 and a range 1. It's a little hard to picture, maybe. Maybe you understand what I'm saying. But basically, you're positioning these traps around the nightmare so you could attack them and just remove them. When you defeat the nightmare, you put it into your hand as a trap. You now have a new trap because you destroyed that nightmare. So this is how you play in the game. You're placing traps, and then you destroy nightmares. That's your actions. That's where you have some agency. The next thing that happens is you will place a nightmare. You draw a card from the deck and place it at the end of the line as a nightmare. So many of the nightmares have when placed, when defeated effects also. If you place a nightmare and has an effect, then you do whatever it is. There could be things like moving cards around, or maybe automatically destroying a trap. It might affect the strength of the nightmares for a round, different things. After you place it, then the nightmares attack. They try and attack your lighthouse. If there are enough nightmares within range to attack your lighthouse, you take damage. Your lighthouse takes damage equal to basically how many nightmares can hit it, based on their range. If not, then they attack the trap cards it could reach. And each trap has its own health. So let's say a trap has a health of 3. You have to have 3 nightmares be able to attack it from within their range. If so, that trap is discarded. So it's either or. And finally, the last thing you do is the first card on the line right next to the lighthouse. If it's a trap, you discard it. If it's a nightmare, you move it to the end of the line. That is basically the whole game. It's just playing cards like this back and forth. Your goal is to survive through the night until the draw deck is empty. Again, these are 18 card decks, so it's, and there's 2 cards that I said are not nightmare, the lighthouse and the lighthouse health. So I guess there's 16 cards total. You place 4 at the beginning, so that leaves 12. You start with 4 in your hand, so that leaves 8. So it's like 8 rounds. I I liked the game. I found the linear aspect of it. It felt a little restrictive. The way I could not move. The only thing I could do is place my cards in a certain spot. It felt like I didn't have a lot of choices. But again, they are puzzles, and you are making choices about which cards you're placing where and when. It is not straightforward and obvious always what to do. But it does feel like a combat of sorts. It does feel more dynamic in that sense. So it's an interesting game. It's my number 5. It is, and like I said, it's really dark, and I like the dark card. It's kind of creepy, and it's almost also whimsical. Maybe you'd have to see it to see what I'm saying. The 2 expansions I have for it, one of them is called Long Night, and it adds more trap cards and player card or trap and nightmare cards. The other one, and it also, because of that, also has a few rounds. The other one is called, what is it called? Where is that expansion? Hang on. Here we go. The other one is Strange Shores, which gives you 4 new lighthouses, and they all, I think it's 4, maybe it's 6, but I think it's 4, and they all have special effects that get triggered at different times. So I'm not sure if they make the game easier or harder, but they add more thinking to the game. I do look forward to see more of this one. I want to see some more interesting effects. I want to see ways to have more things to think about and more choices to make, and I think that will make this game a lot better. I definitely am looking forward to more of that one. Okay, that was my number 5. For my number 4, it is odd that I would pick this one too, just like with the Last Lighthouse, because it's the theme I like. It's a train game. That's the Royal Limited. This is a game about building a train and filling it up with passengers. And it is basically that. You have a conductor, and you have 4 rounds in this game to play. You start with a hand of, I think it's 4 cards. And each turn, all you're doing is playing a card from your hand, or there's a few VIP characters that you start at the beginning of the game, with 2 of them out of, I think, 6 or 8 potential ones. But let's skip those for now. So what you're doing is playing a card from your hand. Either you're playing a train car, which you're attaching to the end of the train. At the beginning, there are no train cards, so you're just putting it first. Or you're playing a passenger, or you're playing the card as a passenger onto the train, into a train car specifically that doesn't have a passenger already. When you play a train card, each card has a number. You have to discard cards from your hand equal to that number to be able to play that card as a train. If it's a passenger, that number needs to match the train car you want to put it onto. So there's a color and a number. So let's say I've played a blue 3. If I want to play a passenger onto it, it has to either have a 3 or a blue. Either one would do. Both are fine. With this game, it's interesting because you don't redraw cards to your hand automatically. The only way to draw cards into your hand are when a round ends, you refill your hand up to 4 cards again. Or is it 5? I don't remember. Or sometimes when you place a passenger, in a train car, it triggers an effect on that train car. Some of the effects let you draw new cards. But that's it. You're going to play a round until you can't play cards anymore, and then the round ends. You go to the next. There are restrictions on what you can play and how. So I already mentioned playing a train car requires you to pay from your hand. The cost ranges from 0 to 3. Playing a passenger doesn't cost anything, but it does trigger effects on the card. Sometimes the train car has a next effect. It says next : and then whatever effect is. If you can't do that next effect when you place the passenger on that train card, then that ends your turn. You have to be able to do that or your turn ends, even if you have a full hand of cards. So there's a couple things that could end your turn. But once your turn ends, whether it's because you ran out of cards or you just can't play anymore, or because you couldn't do the next effect, you rotate the conductor card 90 degrees. You're going to get to rotate it to each side once, which means you're going to have 4 turns total. And you discard any card you have left in your hand, and you draw 4 new ones. If your deck ran out, refill your deck. And then keep playing the game. 4 rounds. By the end of the game, you need to have put as many cards in the train as you can, including the VIPs. I didn't really get into them. They don't have any bonuses, really, but they do have restrictions on how you could play them. They generally have to go between 2 passengers, and it'll tell you, depending on the VIP, it has to be between red passengers, or it has to be between odd numbered passengers, or whatever restriction they chose. So you're going to keep going through 4 rounds, do this. When the game ends, you tally up how many points you have, the lower the better. You get a point for every card not placed onto the train, including the VIPs. So any cards left in your hand or the discard or the draw deck, any VIPs that haven't been placed, and any empty train cards. So you have to fill it up perfectly is what's going on. That's the goal. The way the scoring works, I think you get 0 or 1 points will get you a win. The best win. 1 point will get you a so-so win. Or 2 points will get you a so-so win. I think 2 and 3, and then 4. I don't know. I don't remember exactly how the scoring is, but that's the idea. That is the basic game. The reason I ranked this one as my number 4 is because it's really hard, and it feels super limited with just those 4 rounds. And only a small hand of cards. Especially if you have some 3s, that round is going to end fast if you're playing train cards that are 3. And you kind of have to also, because those are the ones that tend to have the better effects. A train card with a 0 probably going to have a bad effect. A train card with a 3 is probably going to have a great effect. Like, draw up another 2 cards. So yeah, I found it restrictive and hard. It's a really hard game. I don't think I have won well yet. I think my best is 3 points. Now, there is an expansion for this. It's an expansion collection. Remember I mentioned I ordered an expansion for this. It's another whole little wallet with 3 or 4 expansions in it. And it's interesting. I haven't gone through all these yet, but they're interesting. One of them is called Murder on Board, and you have to solve a murder. And I think it's just a matter of placing more cards in the right order, but there's a victim and a detective card. I think there's a detective card. Yeah, there's a detective card. I don't know, the detective does a lot. There's a victim, and then there's a couple other cards. Well, I'm not going to get into that more, because like I said, I haven't played with it. So I'm not going to read the rules in front of you. There's another expansion in this pack that has engines. So now you start with an engine at the front, and the engine will have more restrictions. There's new conductors. So I mentioned your conductor card. You rotate it 4 times. The new conductor card you use in tandem with that one, and it'll change the game. Now it'll tell you for each turn how many cards to draw. So it might be 5 on the first turn and 3 on the second, or whatever that conductor happens to say. Some even give you extra turns. I haven't played with them enough to know how much they change the game, or do they make it easier or harder. I suspect it depends on the conductor. Either way, it's going to add more choices and more thinking, because knowing how many turns you have left can definitely affect what card you're playing. If you're on your last turn, you don't really want to build a passenger car that's going to cost you 3, and you're going to have to discard 3 cards, because getting those 3 cards back in your hand this round is going to be really hard. So definitely, yeah. So knowing what round you're in, how many cards you have, all that matters. That's important. So that's new conductors, and there's some new VIP passengers that work a little bit different. And I think that's it. I feel like there should be another one that I missed. But that's the one I saw just glancing through the rulebook. And so, yeah, that's the Royal Limited, my number 4. Does not mean I dislike it again, but I like the other ones more. So that leaves 3 games. You know which are my top 3 now, but you don't know which order or why. So tune in next week for that. I'll give you a reminder. Food Chain Island, Ugly Griffin Inn, and Fishing Lessons are the last 3 games in my list. Which do I like the most? Which do I like the least? Find out next week. And don't forget to enter the contest. If you didn't do it at the beginning of the show, stop now. Send me a quick email. If you're listening to this on your phone, you don't even have to stop the podcast. I'll keep talking. Go into your email setting, your email program, and start a new email to albert@oneplayerpodcast.com and say subject Lighthouse or whatever you want, and then just type in something about your favorite lighthouse. Like, even just say, "Hey Albert, I want to enter the contest." I'll respond. You'll have an email or message. I'll respond saying, "Hey, you didn't give me any details. Please fill in, tell me about your favorite lighthouse." And now you have an email in your inbox that you can leave unread until you deal with it. Look, I'm making it as easy as I can, so enter the contest. All right. Thanks for listening, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening. We love feedback, so we love hearing from you. You can reach me at julius@oneplayerpodcast.com or jlbird on BGG, and Albert can be reached at albert@oneplayerpodcast.com or Fractaloon on BGG. Our website is oneplayerpodcast.com with the number 1, and we're also on Twitter at oneplayerpodcast. The intro music is copyright Angus, can be found at jamendo.com. The transition music is copyright by Dan Elduce Pancaldi, whose page is at donpancaldi.com. The One Player Podcast is protected under a Creative Commons share-alike license. Thanks for listening.